Good evening, everyone. This is Dave Moore from the Pennsylvania Equality Project. In the coming weeks, we're going to be launching our radio station, 95.7 FM, located here in Meadville, Pennsylvania. But we are going to be taking a number of steps ahead of time to get content loaded to our website and other social media. And I thought today we would begin with a test just to see how this will work. Now, behind me, what you see, the background, is not the best we could possibly do, but we're going to be working on it and we're going to be making improvements as the weeks and months go by. Today, what I thought I would share with everybody is this book by Billy Bean. It's called Going the Other Way. And what I thought I would do is read chapter by chapter from the book and share it with everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. This is chapter 1, Field of My Dreams. Even as a kid, I lived to wear a uniform, but my first choice might have been a little ambitious. At my 4th birthday party, I'm tearing open a present from Mom, a full-body Superman outfit. Pulling it over my clothes, I race out of the house and around the block, hoping the momentum will lift me off the pavement and into the blue sky. Why can't I take off? I scamper back into the house, jumping from couch to armchair to floor. Starting with this first conscious memory, my childhood fantasy life revolved around action heroes. I never cared about toy guns or cars like other boys. I couldn't wait for the comic books Mom would bring home. When I got home from school each day, I'd plop myself in front of the television with a glass of chocolate milk to watch the dynamic duo. On weekends, Mom let me watch Super Friends cartoons, and I'd spend the rest of the day mimicking my heroes. I ran like Flash, swam like Aquaman, flew like Superman. I imagined myself having the strength of Popeye, the courage and guile of Batman, and the loyalty of Robin. While rescuing someone from danger, I morphed back into Superman. Unlike the other kids, I wasn't satisfied with admiring my heroes from afar. I actually strove to acquire a fantastic amalgam of their powers, and as a result, I was always running headfirst into walls, jumping off the highest point I could climb, and generally causing havoc. I never slowed down. Remember those old newspaper stories about kids eating canned spinach like Popeye and then standing in front of speeding trains? Well, I wasn't that stupid. But I was a daredevil. In one crazy stunt, my friends and I would stand on the cement wall in our backyard and jump into the small pool just before the train that ran behind our house rumbled by. And then there was the time I took a running start and leapt off Grandpa's truck, hands outstretched, trying to fly. Catching some major air, but a lot more pavement. I shattered my collarbone. Mom says I taught myself to read before my 4th birthday by devouring those dog-eared comic books. I created elaborate scenarios in which I saved the day, winning the undying love and affection I always longed for. Even though I was just a pint-sized kid, I always managed to kill the intruder, foil the bad guys, and save Mom from danger. Linda Jane Robertson and William Joseph Bean grew up on Camille Street in Santa Ana, just 3 houses from each other. Massive oak trees, manicured lawns, and yes, quite literally, picket fences. They met in junior high. 2 years later, in 10th grade, they began dating. Mom has often described the strong, physical attraction between the two, and by her senior year in high school, when she was 17, she'd become pregnant with me. It was an ominous start in a relationship in an era when premarital sex was taboo. The trouble began, as it often does, with religion. My dad's mother, Carmela Caruso Bean, converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and kept strict tabs on her 5 children. The Robertsons, who weren't particularly religious, were skeptical of the Mormon faith. I remember Mom angrily dismissing it as a cult. After learning about the pregnancy, the Bean family hastily arranged a marriage at a local mortuary presided over by a Mormon bishop. The morgue became a running family joke, but at the time it was anything but funny. Carmela refused to embrace the union, perhaps because I was conceived before vows were exchanged, at least of the official kind. Grandma wanted to name me after her husband, Joseph William Bean, and to baptize me in her newfound faith. But even at an impressionable age and under intense pressure, Mom stayed true to herself. "Over my dead body," she said succinctly, adding that I would be christened Timothy John Bean, if only to spite her overbearing mother-in-law. They eventually compromised on William Darrow Bean, after my father and my mom's father, Darrow Robertson. I hadn't even been born, and hardly anyone was on speaking terms. By the time I arrived on May 11th, 1964, my grandmother had barred her daughter-in-law from the Bean home. When I was still an infant, under the guise of taking me to the park, she smuggled me into the temple for baptism. When Mom found out about this, it marked the last time I got to see Carmela for a long, long time. The baptism stuck for about as long as my parents' marriage. I consider myself a spiritual person, but I grew up viewing organized religions as hypocritical. In my childhood, at least, religion gave people an excuse to mistreat others and then take refuge in the church's teaching. There were plenty of human failings as well. My father failed to defend and protect his wife and newborn. After about a year of marriage, at his mother's urging, he left on a 2-year assignment as a Mormon missionary in Canada. It would be years before he reemerged in my life. I had plenty of time to daydream about a father in a faraway land. Working 2 jobs, Mom was rarely around. After school, I stayed home alone or with her mother. Dottie Arnett, who left me to my own devices. I understood why Mom was gone with the other kids, while households were filled with parents and grandparents and toys and sports gear. Even so, I didn't quite accept it. I'd be in the park with friends and notice someone else's father playing catch or frisbee with his kid. I'd stand and stare, wondering what it would be like to play catch with my dad. Later back home, just what I was missing would hit me, and I'd beg Mom to tell me stories about the man she loved. Mom did her best to reassure me, but not knowing any better, I attributed his abandonment to some grave flaw. If I were a better kid, wouldn't Dad have stayed? Wouldn't I be surrounded by friends? I developed some unusual habits to compensate. When I was in 3rd grade, Mom noticed that I'd started laying out my clothing in neat piles, picking out just the right combination of colors for the next school day. Then I'd wake up before everyone else, make my bed, shower, and comb and blow dry my hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Before long, I was giving Mom fashion tips. "Honey, where in the world did you come from?" she would say, patting me on the backside as I scurried out the door. Being the son of a single mother did have its advantages. Mom and I developed an intense attachment. I slept in her bed in our one-bedroom apartment until I was 5. The men Mom dated, jealous of our bond, accused her of coddling me. The implication was clear. There was something wrong with loving your firstborn too much. The boy will never grow up to be a man. I remember one insisting. Of course, these men never bothered to ask my opinion. If they had, I would have said that I loved every second of my life with Mom. I adored her. She was smart and strong, tall and pretty, with curly brown hair that fell over her shoulders like a cape. She treated me as an equal in every way, making me feel important. I was so proud of her determination to make a life for us, despite all the obstacles thrown in her way. Since we were always on the move, from one cheap apartment to another, I attended a different school every year from preschool until 4th grade. On my first day, Mom, hoping to ward off another awkward transition and questions about our financial status, dressed me in jacket and tie. I hated changing schools because it meant I'd have to endure another round of hazing when the teacher called on Billy Bean, which kids thought was the funniest name they'd ever heard. I wished Mom would change our name back to Robertson, which sounded much more normal. I wished Dad had taken the name with him. The few friends I had were the kids of Mexican immigrants. Like us, they didn't have much money, and both parents worked all the time. They never looked down on the dirty little speed demon with the funny name, the bad suit, and the single mom. Jesse Rodriguez and I became inseparable. The youngest of 6 kids, he showed me how to avoid getting caught doing the naughty things your mother doesn't want you to do. A chain link fence enclosed the diamond of dirt in the small green lot. In the late afternoon sun, a 2-story press box, which doubled as a hot dog stand, cast a long shadow on the field. Home run clouts of a mere 200 feet. Still Herculean for boys, sailed over a hedge that served as a center field fence and smacked into the side of a brown stucco house in a residential neighborhood where many of the little leaguers lived. More than a few balls dove clean through kitchen windows. On the other side of the field, behind the backstop, lay a gravel parking lot and asphalt basketball courts. A Catholic church loomed in the background. This diamond was little different from thousands of ragged fields across the nation, yet the moment I stepped onto it, I knew I'd found the place I belonged. I was 8, and so scrawny that everyone called me Little Billy. I was the last child anyone would pick for any team. But for some inexplicable reason, I was drawn to the crack of the bat, the trajectory of the ball through the summer sky, the early days of spring when the morning dew turns the outfield grass damp and slippery. Who can say what we got involved in, the things we do as kids? Who can connect the dots between these passions and the adults that we become? At the time, it seemed like a wonderful accident. Looking back, it seems as if I didn't have a choice at all. I nearly didn't set foot on any field. It was 1972, and local favorite Richard Nixon had just been reelected president. Mom and I were squeezed together in yet another small apartment in Tustin, just 30 minutes south of Los Angeles. This land of strip malls, tract houses, and blazing heat bordered the city of Santa Ana. Mom struggled to get by in a succession of low-wage jobs, and there was never enough money. She took the jobs available to women at the time: meter maid, police dispatcher, clerk. She worked long and hard to put a roof over our heads and food on the table. At the supermarket, Mom returned items to the shelves as quickly as I tossed them into the basket. She was always telling me we couldn't afford the stuff other kids got. Eager for action, my friend Tommy and I faced a major childhood dilemma, choosing between baseball and karate. We discovered that something called Little League, and of which I'd never heard, would set us back $10 and karate, $15. At first, Mom was adamant that both activities were too expensive. Fearing for the safety of her undersized boy and holding a low opinion of organized sports, she discouraged me from taking up any game at all. What was a rambunctious kid to do? Innocently, I explained the situation to Tommy's father. A few nights later, during dinner, we heard a knock on the front door. It was Tommy's dad. I feigned surprise as best as I could for being an 8-year-old. Mrs. Bean, he said politely, can Billy play baseball if I agree to drive the boys to the field every day? My plan had worked. Charmed. Mom relented, and I became the littlest little leaguer. It turned out that superhero skills were more than aspirations for a lonely kid. They were the building blocks of competitive sports. I wasn't satisfied with admiring my heroes, whose common attribute seemed to be fearlessness. Off the field, I might have worried about everything from life without my biological father to Mom's financial straits. I wonder what my father was like. Did he like sports too? Did I look anything like him? On the field, I left all the worries behind. The moment I stepped on a baseball diamond, or a football field, or a basketball court, I was transitioned into a daring competitor. I longed for the chance to take the winning shot, or hurl a last-second touchdown with defenders beating down on me. I ached to bat in a clutch situation with a go-ahead run on base. And in the final inning, made the spectacular diving catch to save the game. Other kids feared failure. I lived for the opportunity to fail because it meant the opportunity to be the hero. Coaches train players to visualize positive scenarios, but I had already spent years unconditionally developing the habit. Excelling under pressure had become part of my earliest mindset. I willed myself to succeed, and because I believed it would happen, it usually did. I took my best shot, guiding the ball through the hoop into the end zone, or best of all, over the outfield fence. I wondered where this part of me came from. So did my family. Did my biological father have some gene we were unaware of, or was it his absence that brought it out in me? My little action hero. Mom would say with a combination of surprise and affection in her voice, "What'll become of you?" Other kids ran track, swam competitively, or played golf, more solitary athletic pursuits. But I wanted to be an indispensable part of a team, to be in the middle of the action, surrounded by other kids who relied upon me and looked up to me. I felt warm and wanted. Kickball and dodgeball were the first sports I'd ever played at recess in grade school. They led naturally to baseball, basketball, and football. In the heavily Black and Latino environment I grew up in, tennis, golf, and swimming were considered country club, whereas real boys played hoops, football, and baseball. I also enjoyed the feeling of representing the school, and the popularity became intoxicating. The brotherhood of teammates is something individual sport athletes rarely experience. Then there was the pure pleasure of athleticism. I loved mastering the coordination required to hit a baseball on the screws or thread a touchdown pass over the arms of defenders to my target. I loved the feel of the laces on a basketball rotating off my fingertips up into the air and into the hoop. It wasn't enough to be quick and strong. You had to have hand-eye coordination and perfect timing. You had to understand what the coaches called the fundamentals, the techniques that underlie the game. You had to anticipate where the action would lead. Like Superman, you had to sense the disaster about to occur to your team and dash in fast to avert it. You had to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Like Clark Kent, I thought I should have a bookish side. School came easily, and just as in sports, excelling brought me the attention I sought. I loved math and science, but writing was my strongest suit. I wasn't afraid to express myself in words, and this helped me sail through school. Once again, a gift became a means to an end. The other kids seemed indifferent to this eager puppy in their midst, so I provided answers on exams to anyone who asked. They were relieved to breeze through their exams. Cheating seemed a small price to pay for affection. When I reached second grade, class met in the same room as third graders. An older kid, Bobby, was a bully. But as an undersized, insecure kid, I envied his power. The best way to befriend him, I quickly figured out, was to do third grade work. We were hauled into the principal's office for a lecture. Silver lining was that my desire to please my friends revealed a hidden intelligence. I was placed in a new class for advanced kids. In third grade, I developed a crush on my teacher, Ms. Evans. Every month, she handed out citizenship awards. One day, she told us that she would be giving out Citizen of the Year awards, one for boys and one for girls. The way I went after it, you'd have thought I was competing for a batting title. After Christmas vacation, Miss Evans returned to class and introduced herself as Mrs. Leitner. She'd gotten married over the break. I sat at my desk with tears rolling down my cheeks. It was even harder to imagine sharing my teacher than it was my mom. After class, Mrs. Leitner ushered me into the hallway. I looked into her big brown eyes. What could she possibly say to reassure me? You're not going to be a little boy forever, Billy, she said, and someday you will meet someone who loves you as much, and it will make everything seem better. I started crying again. Why do I have to grow up for that? She put her arm around my shoulder. Our private moment cheered me up. By noticing my hurt, she consoled me and made me feel special at the same time. And yes, it wasn't long before she presented me with the Citizens of the Year award. All was well in Mudville. It didn't take long for our little family to expand. Mom had a wild streak, and she wasn't going to stop looking for love simply because she picked one bad apple. Mom would discuss her many suitors, allowing me a fair amount of say. It made me feel like I was the man of the house and softened the impact of the competition for her affection. For a while, Mom dated a man named Bruce Briggs. First, I wasn't big on him, a smooth-talking Santa Ana policeman. Mom, however, was convinced she was pregnant again. So the two got hitched, this time in a more traditional ceremony. In fact, she wasn't pregnant at all. She had a tumor in her uterus the size of a grapefruit. Thinking she was nearly 5 months pregnant, she'd gone about her business before collapsing at work. After removing the growth, her doctors told her she was lucky to even be alive. She struggled to make the marriage work, and the young couple had a son, my half-brother, Brian. They were divorced a year or so later. Bruce Briggs turned out to be a good role model. He was so concerned about the absence of a male figure in my life that he talked my mother into changing my last name to Briggs so he could play a larger role in my life. I finally got my wish for a normal name. Bruce never legally adopted me. We just changed it. From the age of 6 to 13, I was known as Billy Briggs, even though the Briggses were no more. It was all very confusing, especially for my teachers. At least I shared a surname with my little brother. At 14, as I was starting high school, we changed it back to Bean. It was time to stop the charade and that Bruce Briggs was my father. In 1973, Mom started working as dispatcher for the Tustin Police Department. She was promoted to undercover investigator after becoming the first woman to graduate from the police academy. It was at the PD that she met number 3, as I privately nicknamed third husband. Ed Kovac was a brawny police sergeant and former Marine. At the time, he was in an unhappy marriage that had produced 3 children, Colette, Joseph, and Tommy. At the ripe old age of 9, I tried to be the voice of wisdom. I didn't want to accept Ed, whose wife came over to our apartment to threaten my mother. I wanted to turn back the clock. 3 kids? I kept saying to her, shaking my head as gravely as I could. But Mom was tired of being alone. Being twice divorced with 2 kids and low-paying jobs was no picnic. Now she found a principled man who loved her and offered her stability. She loved him too, and Ed's kids were just a part of the package. Mom told me she would marry Ed only if I agreed to give her away. She rented me a white tuxedo, black felt tie, and I walked her down the aisle. In another year, I gained my second half brother, Jason Kovac. I went from being an only child at the age of 5 to the oldest of 6 kids at the age of 11. If I played like Superman, I discovered, I'd be treated like him. In 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president. More importantly, I made the Northeast Santa Ana Little League All-Star squad. We traveled to diamonds up and down the California coast, winning 13 in a row, and sending us in the Western Regional Championship game in San Bernardino. The bleachers were packed with buzzing fans. For the game against the Northern California finalists, Campbell, I looked around in disbelief that all these adults were here to watch a bunch of 12-year-olds running around the bases. California Angels third baseman Doug DeCinces threw out the first pitch. I was hardly the best player. The distinction, in particular, went to Floyd Jensen, a 6'2" right-hander who blew the ball past the hitters. He was one of those man-childs you find in every Little League World Series, the guy who puts the entire team on his back and carries them for as long as his legs would hold out. But like many early achievers, he had trouble living up to the expectations attached to him so early in life. By high school, he had dropped out of sports and become one of the Pink Floyd burnouts who hung out in the parking lot making fun of us goody-goodies. I was still the smallest guy on the team, wondering whether I'd ever grow up. Floyd already had a dozen homers when I hit my first ball out of the park. As I watched the ball disappear over the fence, I stood at the plate in shock as my teammates yelled at me to run around the bases. I played catcher, pitcher, and shortstop, a rarity for a left-hander. My coach, Herschel Music, a Kansas City Royals scout, realized he should use my speed and arm in the outfield. But I thought that was where you show the losers who can't catch anything. Herschel took me to watch Fred Lynn of the Boston Red Sox play against the Angels in Anaheim. Lynn was one of the silkiest athletes I'd ever seen, gliding around center field like a cheetah. His smooth left-handed swing made opposing pitchers weep. He used a slick black hat, and he could hit the ball out of the park on a line. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him. Lynn was the kind of athlete who made everything look easy. Before long, I was imitating his every move, from his crouch in center to the way he massaged the length of the bat as he stood at the plate. From watching Lynn, I learned how to slide on the outfield grass in preparation for a running catch of a ball dropping at my feet. Back at the Little League field, Coach Music would stand at the plate, blue KC cap shielding the bright sun, and hit hundreds of soaring fungos to the outfield, moving me in and out, left and right. No matter how hot it got, I couldn't get enough. I'd strip off my shirt in the blazing California sun and chase madly after the ball, trying my best to impress my coach. Remember to keep your head level as you can. When you run, he'd shout. Run to the spot and then pick up the ball. When I'd accomplish one of his commands, he'd hold the bat high and yell, "Way to go, Billy! Way to go!" When our team made 15 tough catches in a row, he'd take us out for Slurpees and then drop me off at home, tired, sweaty, and happy. I was ready for some serious ball. Back then, Little League tournaments tended to be single elimination, making every game a cliffhanger. 14 teams representing the western region of the United States bunked in dorms at the stadium and fought it out for the ultimate, a berth in the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It was such a big deal that our coach at this point, Dick Prospero, rented limousines to make the 2-hour drive to San Bernardino complete with police escort. We felt like rock stars, far higher up in the hierarchy than mere ball players. Floyd hurled a no-hitter and blasted a tremendous home run over the flagpole in center field. He was living up to legend as the best little leaguer in the nation. I stroked line drives every time up, and we walloped New Mexico 6-0. As I was walking off the field, the last out clutched safely in my glove, I looked into the stands to see my whole family cheering. Next up was Pearl City, Hawaii. It was traditional for each team to present the other team with a gift in a ceremony before the game. We received Hawaiian leis from the other team. They got California oranges. Since he just pitched 6 innings, Floyd couldn't go again. Pat Sims, our second best pitcher, struggled in the early innings. Prospero made the walk to the mound. I was playing center when he mentioned me in. "Just throw to the mitt, kid," he said, flipping me the ball. "You'll do fine." I hardly needed his encouragement. In my white uniform with blue and red lettering, I felt like I was in my Superman outfit all over again. I was hardly throwing speeding bullets, but I caught enough of the plate to pitch 2 scoreless innings. We squeaked by in a close one. We made it to the finals, squaring off against Campbell under the lights. After a week of pillow fights, junk food, late night stories, homesickness, and tense games, we were a close-knit crew. But as our achievement sunk in, we got a little uptight. We looked at each other for support. No one stepped forward. For the first time all season, I could see fear in my teammates' eyes, and there was nothing I could do about it. Floyd was not sharp this time around, and we got beaten up pretty good, losing 7-3. Trying bravely to fight back tears, we walked off the field heads held high. I learned that no one can take away your achievements as a team, even if you don't go all the way. In our hearts, we were champs, even though our name wasn't etched on the trophy that night. It softened the blow when Campbell went on to win the Little League World Series. The best team in the country had defeated us. Back at school, we were greeted like conquering heroes. Hey, Billy, you look great out there. Other kids' parents and even teachers would tell me. A .620 batting average. Amazing. Way to go. People even began to credit me for the collective success. The team played great, they'd say. Keep it up. We know you'll never let us down. Next time, we'll get into Chapter 2, Myth of the Golden Boy. From the book, Billy Beane with Chris Bull, Lessons from a Life in and Out of Major League Baseball, Going the Other Way. The publisher of this book is Marlowe and Company from New York, and the copyright date on this is 2003. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in for Chapter 2 the next time we read. Have a good evening, and we'll talk again soon.